I was trying to squeeze out a little more sleep that Tuesday morning, but our old General Electric fan was louder than a lawnmower. It sat crooked on top of the dresser, vibrating like it was going to launch itself right through the window with Mom's lace curtains. It was around 8-something a.m., August 3rd, 1982, and I can still remember the smell of flannel sheets mixed with cashmere bouquet talcum powder floating down the hallway. Dad was already up, sitting at the edge of the kitchen table in his undershirt, munching on a Drake's Ring ding and sipping black coffee out of a reused jelly jar glass while scanning the morning paper. He grumbled about gas prices and politicians like he did no matter the season. July or December didn't matter. The old Zenith TV in the corner was still showing the tail end of Captain Kangaroo, the volume low enough just to keep the house company. My older sister Diane had barricaded herself in the bathroom with a can of Aquanet and her round brush, blasting Pat Benatar from her Sanyo tape deck, gray and black, with the eject button hanging on for dear life. I swear you could smell the hairspray and Carlton Light cigarettes from 3 rooms away. Me? I was just waiting for Casey Kasem to kick off on the living room radio. Our big old Magnavox stereo system sat between the shelf of Compton's encyclopedias, no one touched since the Atari came home. That morning, Casey was playing Eye in the Sky by the Alan Parsons Project. Floaty, sad, kind of fit the way the sky looked that day. Not cloudy, but white and washed out, like the world was in some kind of pause. From our living room window, I could see the parking lot of the Howard Johnsons across the highway. That place looked like it had been plucked from a postcard. The bright orange A-frame roof, little flags fluttering by the entrance, and always a Pontiac Catalina or Oldsmobile Vista Cruiser parked out front. It was where we went when we wanted to feel like we were on vacation, without ever leaving town. The window posters always promised 28 flavors of ice cream, though everyone I knew just ordered vanilla with hot fudge. They had a jukebox that still played Afternoon Delight and Do You Want to Make Love? But something in the air felt off that morning, quiet, like the world was holding its breath. Even Mom noticed, stirring up some tang in that glass pitcher with the faded daisies on it. She said, "Feels weird today, huh? Like it wants to rain but forgot how." I didn't think much of it. I went out back barefoot, the pavement already hot enough to make my feet tingle, and opened my Star Wars lunchbox to check on the bubble gum cards I kept stashed in there. When there wasn't much to do, I'd just sit out there, listening to the sidewalk pop in the heat and watching bugs do their thing around the azalea bush. The street was just starting to wake up. Mr. Dempsey next door was hosing down his powder blue AMC Gremlin with a leaky garden hose. Mrs. Navarro was out back pinning laundry on the line with those little wooden clothespins that looked like tiny people. Somewhere, I could hear the theme song from The Price is Right, drifting out from a screen door across the street. My buddies, Kenny and Miguel, hadn't shown up yet, but we already had a plan. Hop on our Huffy bikes and ride to the new Foothill Plaza Mall, check if KB Toys got that He-Man shipment in. Miguel swore the Skeletor and He-Man came with Portuguese packaging because of some mix-up with the importer. Before I left, I checked myself in the hallway mirror. I was wearing my E.T. t-shirt that came free in a box of Quisp cereal, and some loose jeans with a rip at the knee that Mom had sewn up with red thread, just to annoy me. My Timex digital watch flashed 8:47 a.m., like it was trying to warn me something was about to happen. And then came the smell. Not toast, not fresh-cut grass, something heavier, like rubber burning, and with it this low, distant thump, like thunder without lightning. I looked out toward the highway. A dark shape of smoke started to rise behind the bright orange roof of the Howard Johnsons. At that moment, it didn't even register. How could a place like that catch fire? It was permanent, solid, like the floral wallpaper at Grandma's house or the clicky channel dial on the TV that never lined up quite right, but always landed on the channel you needed. But that smell didn't lie. And everything that came after? Well, we never talked about it again. It wasn't long before Miguel came pedaling up our driveway on his red Huffy, wearing that goofy no-nukes tank top he got at the county fair. His hair was still wet, and he had his Walkman clipped to the waistband of his OP shorts, one earbud dangling. I could hear a bit of Don't Stop Believin' leaking out as he skidded to a stop. "Dude," he said, squinting toward the highway. "Is that smoke coming from Hojo's?" I shrugged. Maybe they burned a batch of hash browns or something. But deep down, I already knew it wasn't something small. It was too thick, too black. It didn't curl up playfully like barbecue smoke. It climbed, heavy, ugly, the kind of smoke you felt in your throat before you even got near it. Still, we acted like kids do. We tried to pretend it wasn't what it was. So we cut through the back alley behind Gruber's Hardware, where the dumpsters always smelled like old paint and mothballs, and made our way to the overpass. From there, you could see the whole Hojo parking lot, or at least you usually could. That day, the view was different. There were fire trucks already there, 2 of them from what we could tell. Red, with silver ladders gleaming in the morning sun, the kind we used to chase on our bikes, pretending we were in chips. And there was a crowd starting to gather. Not huge, but enough to make it feel like something real was happening. Miguel nudged me. Should we go down there? I hesitated. My gut said no, but my feet said yes. So we coasted our bikes down the embankment and parked by the old payphone near the vending machines, the one where someone had scratched "Disco Sucks" into the metal. We didn't get too close. We just watched. Flames licked up the side of the building like they were looking for something. The sign with the smiling Hojo kid had started to melt. His eyes warped, like they were crying orange plastic tears. A couple of the waitresses stood in the parking lot in their powder blue uniforms holding each other, their aprons still on. One of them was Mrs. Rowley, who always gave me extra whipped cream on my banana split. She looked different without her smile. Then I saw him, Mr. Tiller, the manager. He was sitting on the curb holding what looked like the restaurant's cash register on his lap, just staring at the smoke. Not crying, not angry, just still, like the fire had already taken something from him and the rest was just details. It was strange how quiet it felt, even with sirens and people in heat, like someone had pressed pause on the world. I remembered the last time we'd eaten there, just a couple weeks earlier after Diane's driver's test. She failed it, again, and was so mad she refused to speak to anyone for the rest of the day. But Mom insisted we all go to Hojo's anyway, like it was our tradition. I had the fried clam strips. Diane just pushed her food around. Dad ordered meatloaf, said it tasted like TV dinner sadness. But I remember the booths, that orange vinyl that stuck to the back of your legs, and the little dessert menu under the glass. Miguel got a Shirley Temple that day and bragged about how grown-up it tasted. And now that place, on the smells, the sounds, the weird quiet hum of the kitchen, all of it was burning away in front of us. I felt Miguel glance at me. Neither of us said anything. Back then, we didn't really have the language to process loss. Not like this. Nobody ever sat you down to explain what it meant when something familiar, a place that held your memories, just disappeared. We just watched. After a while, we got back on our bikes and rode toward the mall. It felt wrong, but it also felt like the only thing to do. Like maybe if we kept moving, the moment would stop chasing us. At Foothill Plaza, everything looked the same. The fountain in the center still had that weird statue of dolphins jumping through rings. The floor tiles were still orange and brown, like someone had spilled root beer everywhere and called it art. The music piped in through the overhead speakers was "Let It Whip" by the Daz Band. We wandered into KB Toys and it was freezing in there. You could see your breath if you stood near the stockroom door. Miguel asked the clerk about the He-Man shipment, but the guy just shrugged and said they were still waiting on the delivery from Ohio. Miguel called him a liar under his breath. I stood near the rack of light bright refills and just stared at nothing. It hit me then. Hojo's might not come back. I don't know why that stuck so hard. I mean, things burned down. Places closed. But something about that building, its bright colors, its frozen-in-time feel, it felt like a part of our childhood had just been torched, and nobody had warned us. Miguel tossed me a pack of Bonkers candy he bought with leftover quarters. "Here," he said, "before they stop making these too." We laughed. Sort of. And then we went home. Nobody asked where we were. Nobody said a word about the fire at dinner. Dad was watching MASH reruns with the fan on high. Diane was on the phone, twirling the cord around her finger. Mom was folding towels like it was just another Tuesday. The silence wasn't heavy. It was just there. Maybe that's how it was back then. We didn't unpack things. We didn't post about them or make a thing out of it. We just folded towels, rewound tapes, flipped the channel, and let time do the forgetting. Except, I didn't forget. And now that I think about it, I don't think Miguel did either. That night, the house smelled like tuna casserole and hot laundry. Mom always made the casserole on Tuesdays. I think it came from some old recipe card with a yellow stain on the corner. One of those cards typed up in courier font and tucked inside a plastic box with tabs like casseroles, salads, and Jell-O molds. She always used those crunchy fried onions on top, the kind that came in a cardboard can. And the smell of it, Campbell's cream of mushroom, melted American cheese, and elbow macaroni, kind of hung in the air, soft and heavy, like a wool sweater you couldn't take off. We all sat down at the round kitchen table with the sunflower placemats and drank Lipton iced tea from tall, foggy Tupperware cups that had lost their lids years ago. The TV was on in the background. Family Feud, I think. Richard Dawson was kissing everybody again. Nobody brought up the fire. Not Mom, even though she always had her ear to the neighborhood. Not Diane, even though she drove past the place coming home from work at the photomat booth. Not Dad, who usually had something to say about poor city management whenever something went wrong within a 5-mile radius. Just quiet forks and casserole. It's strange, isn't it? How sometimes the thing on everyone's mind becomes the one thing no one says out loud. I kept glancing at the phone on the wall. That beige rotary one with the tangled cord that could stretch halfway into the den if you yanked it just right. I thought maybe Miguel would call, or Kenny, or maybe Mrs. Rowley would ring and tell Mom what happened, how it all started. But the phone stayed silent like it knew we weren't ready for the conversation. After dinner, Diane disappeared into her room and cranked up her record player. The walls were thin, so I could hear Steve Miller Band playing Abracadabra through her wood-paneled door. Dad was in the garage, probably pretending to organize his tools again while drinking a Pabst and listening to AM radio. Mom wiped down the counter like she was scrubbing away the smell of smoke we never brought up. I went to the living room and sat cross-legged on the shag carpet, orange-brown, worn thin in the middle like a matted dog, and turned on the Zenith with the dial that clicked so loud it felt like loading a shotgun. I flipped through the channels slowly, just for the sound of it. Each station had its own vibe, its own color tone. Like every channel was a different room in somebody else's house. I stopped on Three's Company. Chrissy was misunderstanding something again. Mr. Roper rolled his eyes. But I wasn't really watching. My mind kept drifting to that melted Hojo sign. That smell. The way the booths would never creak the same again. I thought about the jukebox. Did it survive? Did anyone try to save it? And what about the orange chairs? That sticky vinyl? Did it all just burn away? Like it was never there? You ever have a place like that? One that's not flashy or famous, but it held your whole childhood like a keepsake box? A place that made your small world feel a little bigger? Tell me. I want to know I wasn't the only one. That night I laid on top of the sheets in my room. The window cracked open just enough to let in the hum of cicadas and the occasional distant sound of a car speeding down Route 8. I had my portable radio on, the silver Panasonic with the antenna that was always bent near the tip. Casey Kasem was still counting them down. He was playing Only the Lonely by the Motels. That synthy, hollow sound filled the room like a ghost that didn't want to scare you, just sit with you for a while. I looked up at my ceiling. The glow-in-the-dark star stickers were starting to fade, the adhesive wearing thin in the summer heat. I could smell the faint mix of rubber from my Super Ball collection and whatever was left in the air from dinner. Sleep came slow. I dreamt of booths, of whipped cream, of melted signs, and of Miguel, standing in front of the toy shelf at KB, holding a Skeletor figure like it was some kind of relic. When I woke up, it was already hot again. August didn't believe in mercy. The fire made the morning paper. Front page, bottom fold. Local restaurant damaged in early morning blaze. No cause listed. No injuries reported. Just a black and white photo of a firefighter hosing down a smoking rooftop. The color was gone. You couldn't even tell it was the orange building from across the highway. Looked like any old place. But I knew what was lost. Diane grabbed the paper and took it to her room without saying a word. And that was it. No city memorial. No candlelight vigil. No grand reopening. Just life. Continuing. In the days that followed, the heat never really let up. You'd step outside and feel like you were walking into someone's armpit. The cicadas screamed so loud in the afternoon it was like nature itself was trying to drown something out. Miguel and I still rode our bikes around, but we never pedaled past the Hojo again. We took the long way to the plaza, cutting through the baseball fields behind Lincoln Middle School and that empty lot where the old drive-in used to be. The one that still had the rusted speaker poles sticking up like sad little grave markers. It's funny. That summer didn't end when September came. It ended when the Howard Johnsons did, like someone hit pause and forgot to hit play again. I remember spending more time in the garage than usual. It was the one place in the house that didn't pretend to be anything, just heat and oil and cobwebs and the faint smell of Dad's Old Spice lingering on his workbench. I'd sit on the cooler and play with my Matchbox cars on the cement floor, not racing them, just moving them around slowly, like I was trying to recreate traffic from memory. Sometimes Dad would come out there too. He'd pretend to fix the lawnmower or tinker with the weed whacker, but we both knew he just wanted to be in the quiet. He had this old transistor radio he kept on a shelf above the paint cans, and it was always set to the same AM station that played big band music and news. One afternoon, he handed me a cold can of Pepsi Free and said, "Well, the city sure knows how to lose a good thing, huh?" It was the only time he mentioned the fire. I nodded, took a sip, and let the aluminum chill my palm. That taste, sweet, but with a strange afterbite, always reminded me of Friday nights at the bowling alley with Mom's church group. That evening, I walked down to the corner store, the one with the faded 7-Up sign hanging sideways and a gumball machine that always jammed. I had $1.15 in my Velcro wallet, and I used it to buy a pack of Garbage Pail Kids, a push-up pop, and a Hostess Susie Q. The clerk, old Mr. Petrosky, asked if we'd heard what started the fire. I shrugged. He leaned in like he had a secret. Fry station shorted out, they say. Grease trap never cleaned right. Cheap wiring. Probably should have shut it down a year ago. Then he leaned back and just rang me up like it didn't matter. And maybe to him it didn't. Maybe to most people it was just another building. A business. A restaurant that smelled like old oil and served frozen peas with meatloaf. But to us, it was something else. It was where I learned how to read a dessert menu. Where Diane stormed off crying after prom night. Where Mom got food poisoning once and still went back the next week because they had the best coleslaw in the county. Where Dad got a free slice of pie once just because he held the door open for the manager's mother. It was wallpapered into our lives. I asked Miguel one night if he missed it. We were sitting on his back porch drinking Hi-C Ecto-Cooler from mismatched plastic cups with cartoon characters on them. I had Garfield. He had a faded Smurfette. He shrugged. I missed the jukebox. And that one waitress. The one with the glasses and the giant hair. Mrs. Rowley? Yeah. She always remembered your name. There was a pause. Then Miguel said something I hadn't thought about. I don't think it's the food or the booths or even the milkshakes I miss. I think I just miss who we were when we went there. That hit me hard. Because he was right. Places don't just disappear. They take parts of us with them. The next morning, there was yellow tape all around the building. A chain-link fence went up a few days later. The sign was gone. Just an empty metal frame pointing at nothing. And that stretch of highway felt different. Like a tooth had been pulled. And your tongue kept going back to the empty spot. By the second week of August, school supplies started showing up on TV commercials. I remember seeing one for Woolworths that made me irrationally angry, not because I didn't want to go back to school, but because it felt like the world was trying to move on too quickly. We weren't ready. Diane started talking about college again. She had her sights on some place in Oregon that had trees and art people. Dad rolled his eyes. Mom started knitting more, her hands moving faster like she was trying to stitch her way out of something. I spent more time in my room, taping songs off the radio, making fake top 10 charts on notebook paper, complete with my own version of Casey Kasem's voice in between the tracks. The #1 song that week? Rosanna by Toto. And somehow it made me feel a little better. Like the world hadn't completely unraveled. Like maybe the music could still hold things together. But still, every time we passed the empty lot where Howard Johnson's used to be, nobody said anything. The car would go quiet. Even Diane. It was like our silence had become the memorial. Years went by. Then more. The chain-link fence stayed up around the old Hojo lot longer than anyone expected. Like the town just couldn't figure out what to do with that space. A few weeds poked through the cracks in the parking lot. The old foundation sat there, sun-bleached and hollow like bones in the desert. By the time I got my driver's license, finally on my third try, the orange roof was already a memory. Miguel had started wearing his hair shorter. Diane was off in Oregon, writing strange poems and mailing home postcards with pine trees and quotes from Anais Nin. And me? I still avoided that side of the road when I could. It wasn't that I was scared. It just hurt. A little. That kind of quiet hurt that doesn't ask for attention. The kind that lives in the backseat of your brain. Hands folded. waiting for you to look back. I think we all have one of those places. A diner, a record shop, a corner of the school cafeteria, a sun-faded park bench. Somewhere you can almost still hear the sounds, a spoon clinking against a ceramic mug, a voice calling your name, a song playing from a speaker that no longer exists. The Howard Johnsons was mine. But it wasn't just about the grilled cheese or the striped wallpaper or even the waitress who remembered how I liked my ice cream. 2 scoops, no cherry. It was about who we were when we were there. Still in between things, still half-baked and unsorted, still figuring it all out one jukebox song at a time. I drove past the old lot last summer. The fence was gone. In its place was some new office for a dentist or an accountant, glass and steel, with a blinking LED sign out front. I slowed down just for a second. I thought I might feel angry, or sad, or at least a little pang of regret. But instead, I smiled. Because somewhere, deep in the wiring of my brain, I could still see that bright orange roof. I could still hear the crackle of the neon open sign buzzing in the window. I could feel the sticky vinyl of the booth seat on the back of my legs, the way it always did in August. And I could hear Casey Kasem on the radio, counting down the hits like he always did, like he always will somewhere. We never talked about the fire again, not because we forgot, but because part of growing up in the 80s was knowing that not everything had to be spoken. Some things were better left in the jukebox, pressed between tracks, waiting for the right moment to play again. So now I ask you, what was your Howard Johnson's? What place still echoes in your memory not for what it was, but for who you were when you stood inside it? Tell me, because I think if we all said it out loud, just once, those places wouldn't feel so gone after all. They'd live a little longer, in us.